The past perfect and past perfect continuous. Time markers, logic, and the real difference. Spot the difference. Past perfect. When I arrived, she had waited for 2 hours. Past perfect continuous. When I arrived, she had been waiting for 2 hours. Sentence 1. The waiting was done, finished, complete. Sentence 2. The waiting was still going on when I arrived. The two structures, past perfect, had plus V3. She had finished the report. They had left before we arrived. Emphasizes completion. Past perfect continuous. Had been plus V-ing. She had been working on the report. They had been living there for years. Emphasizes duration and process. Time markers. The logic. Group 1. Before the moment. Before, by the time, by plus time, prior to, until then. Before she arrived, I had cleaned the house. By the time the ambulance came, the man had already died. By 2015, the company had expanded to 10 countries. Prior to joining our team, he had worked at Google. The logic. These markers create a deadline in the past. The past perfect tells you what was already complete before that deadline. Group 2. Sequence and completion already, just, yet, once, after. The movie had already started when we sat down. She had just fallen asleep when the phone rang. They hadn't yet made a decision when the deadline passed. Once he had signed the contract, there was no going back. The logic. These markers emphasize that an action reached its endpoint. It's done, sealed, and that completion matters for what comes next. Group 3. Experience markers. Never, ever, the first time, the worst/best. I had never seen snow before I moved to Canada. Had you ever tried Korean food before that trip? It was the first time she had spoken in public. It was the worst storm they had ever experienced. The logic. You're standing at a past moment and looking at someone's whole life experience up to that point, not up to now. Group 4. Explanation and cause. Because, since, so, as. She was exhausted because she hadn't slept all night. He couldn't enter since he had forgotten his badge. The roads were flooded, so they had canceled all flights. Group 5. Duration, anchored to a past moment. For, since, looking back from a past point. She had lived in London for 10 years before moving. He had worked there since 2008 when he got promoted. Emphasis on the completed total. 10 full years. Done. Group 1. Duration, the biggest trigger. For, since, all day, all morning, the whole time. She had been studying for 3 hours when the power went out. They had been dating since January when they moved in together. He had been working all day, so he was completely drained. I had been waiting the whole time, and nobody told me. The logic. Duration marker plus visible result or interruption equals past perfect continuous. You're showing the process, not the finish line. Group 2. Evidence and visible results. That's why. Which is why. Because. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. The ground was wet. It had been raining. He was out of breath because he had been running. The logic. You see the evidence of an activity that was in progress. The continuous explains what was happening before you saw the result. Group 3. How long questions. How long had you been waiting before they called your name? Group 4. Recently/lately, past anchor. He had been feeling unwell recently, so he went to the doctor. Side by side. What changes? Pair 1. Completion versus duration. She had read the book. She finished it. Done. She had been reading the book. She was in the middle of it. Completion matters. Past perfect. Process matters. Past perfect continuous. Pair 2. Result versus visible state. He had painted the wall. The wall was painted. Finished result. He had been painting the wall. His clothes were covered in paint. Finished product. Past perfect. Activity explains state. Past perfect continuous. Pair 3. How much versus how long. She had written 3 chapters. How much? Countable result. She had been writing for 6 hours. How long? Duration. Numbers/quantity. Past perfect. Duration. Past perfect continuous. Key insight. When you have a number or quantity, 3 chapters, 5 emails, 2 meetings, the past perfect simple is almost always the right choice. The continuous doesn't pair well with counted, completed results. Pair 4. Permanent versus temporary. They had lived in Paris for 10 years. A completed fact. It's over. They had been living in Paris for 10 years. Ongoing, at that past moment. Feels more temporary. Pair 5. Waiting. The classic test. I had waited for an hour, so I left. Waiting was done. You completed 1 hour, then decided. I had been waiting for an hour when she arrived. Waiting was still happening. She arrived mid-wait. Pair 6. Stative verbs. Be careful. Some verbs don't take the continuous. Know, believe, want, own, understand, prefer, mean. I had known him for years. I had been knowing him for years. But some verbs can take continuous when they describe a process. She had been thinking about it. Process, not state. He had been feeling sick. Evolving experience. Common mistakes. Mistake 1. Using continuous with counted results. Wrong. She had been writing 3 emails before lunch. Correct. She had written 3 emails before lunch. When there's a specific number, use simple. Mistake 2. Using continuous with stative verbs. Wrong. I had been knowing the answer all along. Correct. I had known the answer all along. Stative verbs don't take continuous forms. Mistake 3. Using simple when evidence is the point. Wrong. His eyes were red because he had cried. Correct. His eyes were red because he had been crying. Recent/ongoing activity explains the visible state. Mistake 4. Forgetting the past reference point. Wrong. I had been working all day. When? Correct. I had been working all day, so I fell asleep. Both tenses need a past reference point.